as tough as the Scandinavian climate, built from solid and durable Swedish steel. These Scania-Vabis bonneted trucks became symbols of post-war recovery not only in Sweden, but throughout all of Europe. They couldn't offer comfort, but they could absolutely guarantee the completion of the toughest logistical tasks. They weren't afraid of muddy dirt roads or logging trails, and they held their own confidently on asphalt. How were the famous post-war Scania-Vabis bonneted trucks born? What path of technological evolution did these vehicles go through? Why would these trucks seem like untamed Mustangs to modern drivers? And what made the hair of drivers in the 40s and 50s turn gray when they got behind the wheel of these brutal monsters? This video is about the rise of the Scania brand and the birth of a Swedish legend. On May 8, 1945, the guns fell silent on the European continent. After nearly 6 years of brutal war, it was finally over. People in Sweden breathed a sigh of relief. Even though the country declared neutrality, for all those years it was surrounded, caught between Nazi-occupied Norway and their ally Finland to the east. In a state of virtual isolation, the country could only rely on its own resources, and building up the military became the top priority. Most businesses joined the defense program, and Scania-Vabis, one of Sweden's largest automakers, was no exception. By 1943, military orders made up 84% of the company's turnover and brought in 98% of its profits. All-wheel drive trucks, armored personnel carriers, and even tanks rolled off the assembly line. But with the end of the war, it came a time for rebuilding. The economy was recovering, and trade, industry, and construction were all on the rise. To adapt to the new realities, Scania-Vabis completely shifted its production direction. The country urgently needed efficient civilian trucks. Already in 1946, the company from Södertälje introduced its first true post-war truck, the L20. This two-axle model complemented the lighter L10, which had been developed back in 1944 with peacetime in mind. The L10 had a 5.6-liter engine with 115 horsepower and was produced in both gasoline and diesel versions. However, it quickly became clear that its efficiency wasn't enough for the new scale of transportation. But the L20 became a real hit. Under its classic long hood was an inline pre-chambered diesel 6 with a displacement of 8.5 liters and 135 horsepower. This engine was part of a modular lineup created in collaboration with the German company Humboldt Deutz. The modular design made it easy to adapt 4, 6, and 8-cylinder engines for different needs, reducing production costs. The 6-cylinder L20 engine was paired with a non-synchronized 4-speed gearbox. The vehicle was built on a sturdy ladder frame and featured a classic leaf spring suspension. The brakes were standard hydraulic ones. There were no pneumatic brakes yet, since engineers at the time were aiming for maximum simplicity in design. On the outside, the L20 stood out with its elongated, narrow butterfly hood and wide cab with a single-piece windshield. Its signature features were the deep, semicircular senders with round headlights mounted on brackets. Comfort? It simply didn't exist. No unnecessary parts at all. Many of these vehicles didn't even have a heater. These tough vehicles demanded equally tough drivers. The lack of power steering and the complicated gearbox required both physical strength and skill, while the hydraulic brakes could turn your hair gray when going downhill with a loaded bed. For today's driver, used to electronics and a steering wheel you can turn with your pinky, the L20 would seem like a wild Mustang. But back then, drivers confidently mastered these machines. The L20s became the all-purpose workhorses on Sweden's regional routes. For heavier jobs, the LS20 6x2 modification appeared, featuring a liftable third axle. The payload increased to 8 tons and the total weight to 15. In 1949, the L20 was replaced by the L60 model. Essentially, it was the same vehicle, but with a new 8.4-liter direct injection engine, developed in collaboration with the British company Leyland. This unit was so reliable and economical that in Sweden it earned the nickname the 250,000-mile engine. It could easily run 400,000 kilometers without a major overhaul. At the same time, Scania didn't forget about the medium-duty segment. That same year, 1949, the L40 model was released with a 4-cylinder Leyland diesel engine. Because of specific vibrations at certain RPMs, drivers quickly nicknamed it the Shaky 4. This medium-duty lineup was completed by the L51 model from 1953, which was the first to get its own name, Drabant. A real breakthrough in handling happened in 1951. Heavy trucks finally got a 5-speed, fully synchronized gearbox. With a 2-stage reducer, the number of gears increased to 10, which made life much easier on difficult roads. The Scania-Vabis L71 Regent, released in 1954, became a truly premium heavy-duty truck. This was already a whole new level. Standard pneumatic brakes greatly improved safety, and the new 9.3-liter diesel engine produced 150 horsepower. Starting in 1955, power steering became available as an option, a real treat for drivers. The 3-axle Regent 6x2 could carry 10 tons, with a total weight reaching 18 tons. The L20 series and its successors, with more than 14,000 units produced in total, laid the foundation for success. They proved their effectiveness in the harsh Scandinavian winters and the muddy logging roads, allowing the company to capture half of the Swedish heavy truck market and compete with Volvo on equal footing. The success extended beyond the country's borders. By 1956, more than 50% of production was being exported to Scandinavia, the Benelux countries, the Middle East, and South America. And here's a very interesting historical fact. These Swedish vehicles handled mud and the lack of proper roads so well that in South America, people were literally snapping them up. Demand was so crazy that in 1957, Scania-Vabis took an unprecedented step. The company opened its first factory outside of Sweden, and not somewhere nearby in Europe, but in Brazil, in the city of São Bernardo do Campo. The tropical climate and endless off-road conditions turned out to be the perfect testing ground for Swedish steel. Over time, the Brazilian market would become one of the company's largest in the world, and local drivers would come to love Scania as if it were their own national brand. But the 60s were approaching. An incredible economic boom and new roads demanded a whole new level of power. The mining industry, construction workers, and long-haul carriers all needed giants. And the Swedish timber industry wasn't standing still either. After all, the wood wasn't going to deliver itself to IKEA factories. The answer to these challenges was the completely new 1958 model, the L75. A reinforced frame, a spacious all-metal cab with large windows, and in the tractor units, even a sleeper compartment, plus those distinctive U-shaped fenders with built-in headlights. Under the hood beat a 10.3-liter Hart with 165 horsepower. For the toughest logging and quarry conditions, they created the LT75 6x4 version with a tandem axle that featured pneumatic differential locking. The total weight of such road trains could reach 40 tons. And in 1961, the Super version appeared, equipped with a turbo diesel engine producing 205 horsepower. Next came the 11-liter L76 model with up to 260 horsepower and a turbocharger, which was produced until 1968. Interestingly, back in 1963, Scania-Vabis introduced the cab-over engine LB76 model for European roads with strict length restrictions. But the classic front end and cab design from the 50s turned out to be so successful that it continued to be produced all the way until 1980. Over 10 years, from 1958 to 1968, 43,000 L75 and L76 trucks were produced, half of which were distributed across Europe. It was the experience and technical solutions tested on these rugged bonneted trucks that became the foundation on which modern Scania, now without the Vabis name, was built. Today, early post-war models are a real rarity. Examples like the 1948 LS23 or the 1950 LS64 are carefully preserved in the company museum in Södertälje and in private collections, serving as reminders of an era when steel was thick and driving a truck was considered a job for the truly strong-willed. And what do you think? Could a modern long-haul truck driver, used to climate control and automatic transmissions, handle a shift behind the wheel of such a tough Swedish classic from 1950? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss new stories from the world of technology.